What we're hoping to do here today is to actually create a real conversation about the good we're trying to do for the world in a meaningful way. One of my favorite quotes to try to frame up this first panel was by Thoreau. He said, "Not only must we be good, but we must be good for something or someone bigger than ourselves." I think this first panel illustrates that quite well. It's a partnership between the UN Foundation, or the UN and the Foundation and NBC's Revolution TV show. The General Secretary has been deeply focused on this historic link between the artists and cause, and what that link can do to amplify the story. For example, in this instance, of 1 in 5 people that don't have, or 1 out of 5 people around the world only have access to energy, right? So there's a huge gap there. And these folks have been helping to amplify that story and have illustrated a remarkable partnership between the artist, the entertainer, and the social cause movement. So I want to invite them to the platform. And in particular, this one will be moderated by Michael Daniels, the bureau chief for TV Magazine in LA. So come on up. We welcome them to the platform.
Guys okay over there? Hey everyone, I'm Mike Schneider, the Los Angeles bureau chief of TV Guide magazine, and also the host of KCRW's The Spinoff, which is a monthly podcast about the TV industry. You can download it wherever you download things. This is a great panel because the intersection of entertainment and social good, obviously, is something that is important to these guys and also to a lot of folks in Hollywood. So glad we're doing this today. Let me introduce our panel right now. After I cough, hold on. Austin, what have you done to me? First up, we've got Billy Burke, the star of Revolution. He plays, of course, the protagonist, Miles Matheson, the hero with a dark history. Billy Burke. Shout out for Billy Burke. David Lyons, who plays General Sebastian Monroe, the former dictator of the former Monroe Republic. Next up, Bahareh Seyedi, who's a energy policy specialist within the Environment and Energy Group of the UNDP. And before that, she was also based in UNDP country office in Burkina Faso, where she managed multiple energy and environmental projects. Welcome. Next up, Mr. Trey Callaway, who is the co-executive producer of Revolution. He joined the show this season, in season 2. Before that, he spent 6 years on CSI NY, and he also wrote the film, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Shout out to that. And of course, Steve Tao, who I've known for years, the former head of drama at ABC, and now most recently works over at Bad Robot, working on shows such as Revolution and Person of Interest. That's J.J. Abrams' film and television company, Bad Robot. Steve Tao. So guys, let's talk about, there's been this unique relationship between the UN and Revolution, actually. Talk about sort of how that relationship was formed. Steve, since you've been around the show for a while, where did this relationship come from?
Well, interestingly, I work for a company called Bad Robot, but we have a very important message that we try to get forth in our programming, which is social good. So last year we developed a division of the company called Good Robot, and the UN came to us at Good Robot with the specific notion that they loved what we were doing on Revolution. The subject matter was about a world in which there is no power, and one of the understated issues that the UN tries to address is illuminating the fact that 1 out of 7 people in this world do not have access to energy. So about a year ago, we sat down with the UN and tried to figure out a partnership. And this was a case in which our show had a concept which was directly related to something that was addressing the UN. And it was a platform for them to be able to perhaps illuminate stories. It was a way for us to get actually real stories out on the ground where we could actually talk to people who were working with people who didn't have access to power.
What's interesting, especially in season 1, early on, the sort of depiction of this world where what happens when there's a power vacuum, when there's no government, and sort of what comes in to fill that void, and also developing an agrarian society. And talk about how the UN was sort of intrigued by what you guys had already been doing on the show and in depicting this world.
Well, they were intrigued by some of the specific things that we were doing, just showing how people just basically survived. What they offered us was a deeper understanding of societies where there is no power, where there are warlords. And what they did was they offered to bring in experts who are feet on the ground, boots on the ground in these territories, and show us the stories and the people who were operating in this world. And a lot of the characters and a lot of the subplots this year were actually inspired by the speeches and the talks that we had with the experts. And it pointed to Trey, Callaway, one of our writers here, who can talk about some of those stories.
Yeah, Trey, tell us a little bit about sort of the meeting with the UN folks and sort of what are some of the things you gleaned from that?
Well, it's been an extraordinary partnership, honestly, because, look, we're all about the business normally of just telling an exciting, thrilling, emotional story about a family and some friends and even some enemies who were trying to survive and thrive in a feudal United States 15 years after a global blackout. That's great. That's our day job. But to have partnered with the UN and sit down and hear, frankly, some of the most incredible stories I've ever heard as a storyteller myself has been nothing short of really, really inspiring. And it has helped us be exciting and thrilling and emotional in ways that are much more real at the end of the day. So when you get to sit down in person or Skype with or talk on the phone with UN experts, Dirk Segar and Amani Salah and Pernille Ironside, the first thing your first takeaway is that you can't work at the UN unless you have a really cool name. But
Trey Callaway, that's a pretty good name. I like Trey Callaway.
No,
PI.
But beyond that, honestly, to sit and hear extraordinary tales of people working to negotiate with dangerous warlords in the Sudan or Darfur, to be able to hear harrowing first-person accounts of kidnappings or overcrowded refugee camps in Yemen or Syria, to be able to hear tales of the fight to liberate child soldiers from the People's Republic of Congo. These are stories that, quite honestly, after we finished each one of these interviews with a different UN expert, every writer in the room, we all sort of turn to each other in the Revolution Writers Room and say, we're not worthy. These are really, really amazing stories. So whatever little amount we're able to do then in formulating character and story that allows us to be true to, as true as a television show Wednesday nights at 8/7 Central can be, as much as we can do to push ourselves a little closer to what is real, the show has ultimately benefited greatly this season.
Can you give us some examples of some of the things that you've gleaned from these relationships that you've actually applied to the show?
Definitely. I mean, we have applied in dramatic fashion some of the lessons we learned about negotiating with and dealing with warlords. That helped fuel a story early in our season when our heroes had to do battle with Titus Andover, a nefarious warlord terrorizing the Texas plains. We've applied some of the lessons learned to depictions of refugee camps in the South and in the northeastern United States. We have also applied lessons learned to disease outbreak, not only discussions of polio and other diseases that would affect people in a powerless society, but specifically a typhus outbreak that occurred later in our season, all the way up to and including the forcible conscription of young people as child soldiers at the hands of our nefarious villains, the so-called patriots. So all of those things were really very directly inspired in a lot of ways by our conversations with UN experts.
And Billy and David, what's sort of going through your mind when you're playing these characters and sort of going through these things, like being captured by a warlord? And do you ever sit there and think, I'm on a TV show, but this is pretty realistic. I mean, of all the shows about the apocalypse on television right now, I do have to say, and there are quite a few, by the way, Revolution is the most grounded and the most sort of, this could really happen, and this does feel rooted in reality, if the power were to go out. But what's it like from your perspective as an actor, sort of, actually being boots on the ground and playing these characters?
Well, thank you. Like you said, it is a TV show. So, we can only do so much. But in terms of the warlord situation, which was brilliantly played by our friend Matt Ross, who came on, the one thing that it did start generating in my mind was the how does this situation come about? He's taking advantage of his surroundings, this guy, and how does that start? It all starts with a simple idea, and usually a kind of a noble idea. And in his case, he was trying to find blood for his wife, who's sick, needs constant transfusions. So starts out, and he's probably, early on, I made this up in my head, but, that's what we do, backstory. He's trying to get blood for his wife, and he's probably, gathering donors, and they all like her, and they want to keep her alive, and then all of a sudden he realizes that blood is currency, and then, it extrapolates from there. He just, all of a sudden he's killing folks for their blood, and how likely is that in a world without power and in that situation? It's anything that's currency, you're gonna an evil mind will take advantage of.
Bahareh, I want to get to you next, but first we actually have a clip since we were talking a little bit about how this partnership works and how it's impacted the show. So that's probably a good time to actually roll it right now. So here's a good example of the UN in action on Revolution.
If you have a voucher. You can only board the wagon if you have a voucher. Okay. Everybody. This one is full. There will be more slots available soon.
There we go. So that was we couldn't see it on stage, but I assume that was the.
Was that from our show?
Was that the refugee?
It was from a radio play version of it.
Right. That was I assume a refugee camp scene.
I believe that is what that was.
So. Bahareh, let's talk about this from the reality and sort of the life of people out there who actually do live without power, and talk about how that impacts women, children, and sort of some of the things that you are teaching these guys.
Thanks, Michael. First of all, I want to emphasize that we've been talking about this revolution as a TV show. So for us here in the audience and also on the panel, it is a TV show, but we have to recognize that it's not a TV show for 3 billion in the world, 3 billion people in the world who are energy poor. So it's a day-to-day reality that impacts their lives. 1.2 billion people in the world do not have electricity. So that's one number that we need to keep in mind. The 3 billion people that I mentioned still cook their food and heat their homes with traditional fuels like wood, animal dung, charcoal, and so on. And normally this is done in indoor spaces where they're exposed to toxic fumes, and this causes about 3.5 million deaths per year, mainly women and children that are exposed and inhale this toxic fume. And that is more than the number of people dying from HIV and AIDS combined. So this is just give you the big picture that we're dealing with right now. As it was mentioned, women and children are affected disproportionately. So if you are a woman in Burkina Faso, in sub-Saharan Africa, where I had the opportunity to live in, your day would start at 4 in the morning. So you get up at 4, all the tasks of the domestic tasks are on you and your children, mainly little girls who support you. So you start by grinding the mill, dehusking the rice. All of this is done by the power of hand. It can take hours. Then you need water to cook the food with, so you have to walk for miles and miles to fetch the water, normally from underground holes where you have to basically dig it out, put it in buckets on top of your head, walk all the way back to your village. Then you need to start a fire, so you need wood. Then again, you get out, walk around, grab sometimes large amounts of wood, carry it on your head, come back, just to make food. So you can see how strenuous this could be and how time-consuming. And at nighttime, if your kids want to study, they don't have light, so that's another major impact on their lives. Healthcare is affected. Estimates say that per minute, 1 woman dies because of pregnancy complications, mainly due to not having electricity in the hair care facility. So that's another major impact. And that is why the world has now recognized that energy poverty is an issue that needs to be dealt with. We need to eradicate energy poverty. And that's why in 2011, the Secretary General of the UN launched an initiative, Sustainable Energy for All, with 3 goals. And one of the main goals is achieving universal access to energy by 2030. In other words, eradicating energy poverty.
That way everyone can finally watch Revolution. That 1 in 5 number is astounding, and it's stunning. And I think one of the things that we always, in just watching this show is how fragile sort of even our society is and dependent on electricity. It really is. And the second the power goes out on this show, it's gradual, but it quickly becomes anarchy. And David, talk about, and you've been asked this question a lot, but being on the show, I'm sure you've thought about this quite a bit and what it must be like, or what it could be like if we were to suddenly lose power, and how would you sort of cope with that? And do you ever think about the global impact of that?
Absolutely. And when we first started, that was the main topic of conversation with everyone involved. But you know what? These kind of dialogues, it's so amazing being here as part of it, but what's fascinating about it is that we approach a lot of these things as storytellers, whether it be actors, writers, directors, and so on, from a point of view where we get a little bit irreverent with some of the storytelling very often, where you kind of you try and place yourself in that environment, but it's very hard to do in terms of imagination. We call it sci-fi, and what's amazing here is, as Bahareh has mentioned, 1.3 billion people have no electricity.
It's not sci-fi at all.
It's not sci-fi. It's non-fiction. And so, we do, as actors, put ourselves in that mind space, but it's dialogues like this which allow us as a community to start really talking about it, really placing ourselves in it. And then when we do view something like this, we can view it through the lens not of a Western privileged lens, but something with a little bit more empathy.
And talk about, as an actor, being involved with a project that actually has this relationship with the UN and sort of how it elevates. I mean, this isn't just a traditional TV show. You're working with the United Nations.
Yeah, and I was really proud of Bad Robot and Warner Brothers and NBC that they got in, for want of a better word, in bed with the UN. Because I think that too often we don't take responsibility for the stories we tell. And I think that it's a great thing to hear Bahareh talk about this stuff and have that reflected in a medium which is, so expansive. Because we have the ability to communicate these things. And I think this is a beautiful thing.
And Billy, you were at the season 2 premiere at the UN, correct? Talk about that experience.
To be honest, it was quite daunting at first, and then somewhat humbling. I mean, we got there and we were given all this information that I was theretofore clueless about. The 1.3 billion people in the world living without power, and so we step into this place where all the real issues of the world, all the real important issues of the world, are discussed on a daily basis. And here we come with our big flashy TV show with characters who, frankly, their hair looks too good for a world without blow dryers, And so I sat in that seat for a while, and I was really sort of, we all were, Tracy and Giancarlo and I all were, privileged enough to be there, and I was suddenly just really overcome with the reality of it, and what it left me with was instead of being cynical about it, it left me with that notion of like, okay, great, we're here, we're creating a dialogue. What can we do? What can we actually do? And that's why I sit here today. I mean, I think I speak for Dave and I both. We're here to sort of learn and talk about. Okay, great. It's nice that we're bringing it to a conversation, but what can we actually do about it?
Well, I think we have another clip now. I believe related to the UN premiere. Want to roll that?
I'm gonna need some things.
There we go.
Was that the maggot scene?
Couldn't see, but
That was a lot of fun.
Bahareh, can you talk a little bit about what shows like Revolution and the entertainment industry can do in general in sort of promoting these ideas and also getting the public educated on some of these issues?
So the premiere of the second season that was basically played on at the UN is an example of what can happen between the issues of the real world and the creative community. And I was personally very touched by the way the actors themselves were affected by the process of creating the TV show based on the realities that people live. So that was one of the effects of this collaboration was triggering something in the individuals themselves. And the second effect, or the ripple effect of that, was that they have access to a larger audience, their fans, and they could go out there and communicate the message in a creative way to basically reach the broader and the general public. And so this is one way of basically trying to get the message out there on energy poverty that the UN has been working on with the creative community. Now, in terms of what the general public can do, this is the digital world. You have attended many sessions today and maybe yesterday and maybe tomorrow about today's world and the connectivity that we're experiencing right now. So in 2000, when the world came together to develop the development agenda, they came up with 8 goals, for example. And none of these goals mentioned energy. A mistake, right? And now we're entering 2015, where the next development agenda will be set. Through media, social media, your networks and the general public can participate in different ways, and your voice can be heard in the discussions of the post-2015 development agenda. One way, check out worldwewant2015.org. You will see all the information that you need about this post-2015 development agenda, how you can get involved, and how you can get your voices heard.
And Steve and Trey, from your perspective, how does this work from a production and from a business perspective? And then Steve, maybe you could talk a little bit more about Good Robot as well, which is sort of a good example of the industry trying to give back.
Certainly. I think one of the things that we love to do as storytellers is tell a great story that has an impact on people. And with Revolution, we came up with a really cool concept, but we also had a very natural forum in which we could tell stories that were about people. And oftentimes, entertainment is accused of doing social good stories that are just good for you. They're sort of like medicine. You don't really want to see that episode, but it's the very special episode of Mike and Molly or something. Not to denigrate Mike and Molly, which is a great show.
What do you have against Mike and Molly, Steve?
Nothing against Mike and Molly, but this is an example of a TV show where the concept is organically about people who are in trouble. And we are able to reach out and find people who know the issue, like Bahareh, and can actually tell real stories that have really tremendous emotional impact. From a business standpoint, I think it's really great for television to reach out to the broadest audience possible. And our partnership with the UN was a way that we could reach an audience that normally does not get reached out to by the entertainment community.
And Steve, Trey, I'll give you the final word.
No. Well, I would just echo the sentiment, and on behalf of the show's creator and executive producer, Eric Kripke, and all of the writing staff and the entire production crew here in Austin, it has been a great privilege and pleasure and honor to be able to work directly with the UN and its experts. I think, if I may say so, the show has benefited greatly this second season through that partnership, and it is definitely what we hope to be a continuing partnership, because the show is better for it. And every conversation that we have with UN experts, then those of us back in Los Angeles and here in Austin are able to turn and have our own internal meetings with production designers, set deck, props, costumes, certainly in terms of character and story, every bit of information that is very real that we get from the UN, we are able to apply directly to the show and hopefully deliver the viewing audience an even better and richer ride for it.
Right. If you're not watching Revolution, it's a fun show. I mean, if you're just watch it for the bromance between these two alone. But not only is it doing good, but it's also a lot of fun, and it makes you think too. So watch Revolution on NBC, and I think that's it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
We're going to keep you guys up there because we're going to open it up for a couple of questions. So if you guys have any questions, you got one right here? Great.
What's the hardest challenge on trying to capture a global problem and challenge and put it into a television show that is meant to be entertaining, but you still want to bring home the message of what they're trying to do without stomping all over it?
That's a good question.
I can speak to that a little bit because I remember one of the most sobering moments for me was getting an early briefing from the UN that said that in India alone there are 306 million people without electricity, and that's roughly the United States population. And I was so sort of overwhelmed by not only that statistic, but the irony of reading it on my cell phone, that I put it down and I went straight into the writer's room and we began a conversation just about two people trying to connect in the darkness, just trying to have a conversation. In other words, you can take these giant global problems that can feel overwhelming and daunting and then creatively funnel it down into very personal human moments. I think that's where we can really deliver the strongest punch at trying to get these messages home.
That's great. One more question? Any other questions? Great.
Hi, you guys have done such a great job of creating this fictional universe that is reality for so many people. Have you thought about how to create a call to action for people that are immersed in this universe and thinking about these issues so that you can actually translate that momentum into the fans of the show being able to participate and being part of the solution?
Actually, we have. For the second season DVD of Revolution, we are doing a small featurette at the end where we are talking about the collaboration between the UN, Bad Robot, NBC, and Warner Brothers, and illuminating how the issue has been brought up in the writer's room and in the show itself. There are calls to action throughout. We are developing a site called Factor Fiction where you can see images of Revolution's depiction of a world without power juxtaposed against a world where there really is no power, and you can see the incredible similarities. Right now, I think our biggest call to action is awareness, trying to get the message out that this is actually a problem, because it doesn't seem like a problem until you actually learn about it. So those are our first steps.
That's great. That's a great point to transition. Can we thank our panel one more time? Thank you guys so much. Thanks.